Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. It's time to do our final draft-related show of the year. And that actually, there's one more still to come, but talk about the UDFA signings after the draft. One of the big moments for the Ravens, of course, is once they're done with their last selection and Mr. Irrelevant has been named, they get on the phone. They have an enormous mob of people at the castle, each calling individual guys that they like, trying to see if they can get them on a UDFA contract. And of course, it's a fun process. We've seen some insights into it in the last couple of years. Here to discuss the players they signed this year with me is Josh Reed. Josh, how you doing?
Doing great, Ken. How you doing?
Oh, always a pleasure to have you on, Josh. Thank you so much for all the draft coverage you did this last time, being on the watch party show and whatnot. Always a lot of fun to do that. Yeah, anything to say about the party itself and how that is to you?
It was fun, man. I wish I could have joined you guys for night two, but my wife wasn't feeling well, so I was stuck on dad duty. But I was tuning into you guys. I had the ESPN broadcast going on, then I had you guys going on my computer, so it was fun to watch.
All right, well, very cool. Always a lot of fun to talk football with the folks there, and got some good, interesting value picks. Now, we're here to talk about the UDFAs, and the way we do this is the same as we've done in the past, which is Josh will pick one, and then I'll pick the next one to kind of nominate for discussion. But you go ahead, you're first.
Okay, my first is probably the guy who's most likely to make the roster of all these guys, and that's Maryland safety Bo Braid. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Bo Braid. He's actually a bit of a surprising undrafted free agent. Some pundits had him ranked as high as they projected him to go as high as the fourth round. They definitely thought he was going to be drafted somewhere on day 3, and for him to fall all the way out of the draft was a bit surprising. A bit surprising to me too. Just like I know the Ravens like their Maryland guys. That'd be a common theme with a lot of these guys on this list. A lot of these guys are a lot of Maryland native guys. Like Bo is from Clarksville, Maryland. He's a guy that he was a 2-year starter for the Terps past 2 years. Led them in tackles the past 2 seasons, 75 in last season and 85 the year before that. He's a guy that really can I wouldn't say slot right at that Geno Stone role, because Geno Stone's playing at a pretty high level his last year with the Ravens, but a guy who could definitely, he's more of an ideal third safety in the NFL. I think of the guys on this list, he's probably the guy with the best odds of making it, just given the Ravens' lack of depth at the safety position.
Yeah, I would agree that being a safety is going to help improve his chances to make the roster. At 6'1", 210, he's got kind of that ideal safety size. He does not have ideal safety production numbers, which is probably the reason he went undrafted, or at least part of it. 18.8% missed tackle rate in 2023 was the worst of his career, but he's still 17.0% for all his years combined. 7.9 yards per target career. Also not good in 79 college targets. Ravens really need a split field guy. This guy is more of a pure strong safety. That's how I see Braid. Still, I would say he has looked the Michigan cut up to try and watch as many plays as I could from one game. They're not filtered in some way for just as good plays. Just about this was all the defense's plays. He did have a nice penetration to cut down Corum near the goal line off the well, it's actually in the left B gap, but he took down McCarthy on a keeper that I thought was an impressive play. But he also got picked up by Corum on 2 pass rushes. And if you know about Blake Corum, one of my complaints about him is terrible pass blocker. And so it's not good to see Braid get picked up by him twice. Wasn't particularly impressive versus the run. I think, honestly, he's probably more of a strong safety / dime than a true split field safety. So if on the early downs you want a guy who can play the back end, I'm not sure he's really the right guy. And that means there's a lot of overlap between him and Hamilton, which would be true of a lot of players because Hamilton's a great player who can do a lot of things. But if they really wanted a pure free safety type to split the back end duties with Marcus Williams, Braid is a little bit misshaped for that, I think. Now, it could work out. But I think if he were truly a free safety type talent or even a split field talent, I think he'd have been for certain drafted with his kind of size.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about guys in this range, man. A lot of them, all the free safeties got snatched up. Whether it was, even a guy like Evan Williams went a lot higher than I thought he was going to go on day 3. I think he ended up going to the Packers, I believe, or somebody. Mm-hmm. And like I said, people will snatch up those true free safety types. So a lot of times with UDFAs, you're kind of trying to put a round peg into a square hole sometimes. But if you can shave down those edges, man, and get that peg to fit into the hole, then you never know. And I know the Ravens love their Terps, and like I said, he's probably a guy he's had their eye on in a while. And in a sense, he's a little similar to the guy they picked up in the 7th round, as far as a guy who's like more of a box / dimebacker kind of dude. But you never know what come preseason. Like there's not too much difference between 7th rounder and UDFA when it comes to stuff like that.
Not too much, other than they're signed for 4 years, and that's often something players really want to avoid, being drafted in the 7th round a lot of the times. They have a home. They don't have to worry about working the phones. But on the other hand, they're also signed for 4 years, and they don't get an RFA year out there at the end. And they don't get the choice of fit also. So real important. First impressions on any job are important. You want to get to that job where they really want you. We'll move on now. I'll move on to my first guy, who's Joe Evans, the defensive end out of Iowa, 6'1", 246.
My next guy.
470. Cartoonishly short arms at 30.5 inches, which is really important to not be disadvantaged in that way. Kind of creates an ultimate kind of a tweener situation for him, because he's really too small to play inside, but his arms are also too short to play at the edge. He's a thick, muscular guy, and a real high motor, 24 bench reps, 41.5-inch vert. So very explosive dude in terms of this. I think as a priority player, he's a aside from the arm length, he's a very solid athlete with good college production. So that's been very solid in 5 years there. 28 career sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 6 passes defense in 50 games. One of the things you see on tape is he rushes frequently from a 2-point stance, but he has also kicked inside to play on some third downs, get extra things. In 2023, he improved the pyramid of pressures he's got at the base. Now, before that, I talk about this sometimes, he'd had like a few too many sacks relative to his pressures, meaning he was getting finishes, and Iowa's generally fine defense may have been creating those opportunities for him. You want finishers, don't get me wrong. It's great to have some finishers. It's more important to have the first pressure guys. And that's why a guy like Owe is really valuable. A guy like Clowney, tremendously valuable, even though he finished a bunch. But Evans, more of a finisher, but he did improve his ratio of pressures to finishes this last year. And 7.1% missed tackle rate, 9.6 career is fine. And if you're wondering about a Sam linebacker, he's dropped to cover on just 6.4% of pass snaps.
Yeah, he's a guy I was a little surprised like that he went undrafted, just given that one of his teammates, it was Logan Lee, went in the 6th round to the Steelers, and he's considered undersized for his position too. And Joe was the more productive guy in college, especially this past season with 9.5 sacks compared to Lee's. I think he only had 3. And so yeah, he's a guy that high motor. He'd probably be competing with Malik Ham for that final 6th and final outside linebacker spot. I'd slightly give Malik Ham the edge just because he can drop and be the ideal Sam behind Kyle Van Noy. So they take a really strong preseason from Joe Evans to beat Malik Ham out. But you never know with these kind of things, man. I mean, I don't know if Ojabo was going to be ready to go for the start of training camp or anything like that. And like I said, I don't know how they're going to have Kyle Van Noy on the pitch count. He's a guy that does best when he doesn't have a whole lot of training camp reps. So he may be a guy that gets ample opportunity to turn some heads in training camp in the preseason, and you never know what happens. But he's my second favorite guy on this list as well.
Who's your third?
Third. Let's see. Like I said, a lot of these guys, like I said, aren't super impressive. There are some guys that might stand a chance. The guy who has kind of been making the rounds as far as catching attention from Ravens fans online on Twitter is definitely Ole Miss wide receiver Dayton Wade. Bit of a late bloomer. He didn't have his best season until his final year as a 5th-year senior at Ole Miss. Started his career at Western Kentucky. Didn't really do much, but this past season put up 55 catches, 830 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And his highlight tape is littered with contested catches. For a guy who's only 5'10" and under 200 pounds, you would have thought he goes up for the ball like a Keon Coleman. The way he battles for the ball, comes down with it. So he's a guy who definitely could and turn some heads in training camp, and especially if he can mix a lot of those highlight reel plays and in the preseason and in training camp, because it's going to be an uphill battle to try to make the receiver make this roster as that sixth receiver, beating on a guy like Tylan Wallace.
Yeah, I hope he makes the practice squad. I hope he's a guy who the Ravens will have around if they have an injury. Another gadget guy potentially. He's 5'9", 176, and 29 and a quarter inch arms. Yeah, runs 4.46. So he profiles as a pure slot receiver in the NFL. And you're exactly right. There's some great contested catches there. The one he had against Georgia is against the right cornerback Everett there. Yeah. Everett is 6'1". And Wade is 5'9", and it does not look that close in when they're together. And he went up for the ball, and if you want to have the mirror image, it was exactly on the opposite side of the field of Odell Beckham's catch. I think it was rookie year, the one that everybody knows was one hand grab.
Against the Cowboys and Brandon Carr.
Yeah. Look, it looks like the same play. It looks like the same damn play. But go watch that if you want to see great play. In terms of his general receiving statistics, 10.8 yards per target as a senior. That's a real milestone. Obviously, anytime anybody's over 10. The last 2 years, the passer rating throwing to him has been 107 and 124. He probably was a priority player, I would guess. I guess they paid him a little more than the kind of the minimum bonus to get him in the door. And I'm hopeful he has some staying power, at least with the Ravens practice squad.
Yeah, he'll definitely be battling a guy like Sean Wade, who turned some heads last preseason for one of those priority practice squad spots.
Sean Ryan, yes.
Yeah, I'm getting my two guys mixed up. It's Dayton Wade and Sean Ryan. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, my turn, right? For number 3.
Yep.
Let's go to, one that's kind of interesting, Corey Bullock of Maryland. Maybe we talk about him. I think he's got a chance to stick, probably on a practice squad, probably not as on the roster, but I think he's got a chance to stick. 6'3", 307, 32 and 3/8, 532. Really poor athletic testing across the board. Played 3 years at NC Central, then finished up at Maryland for a year, where he was an all Big Ten honorable mention in 2023. Split his time between left guard and right guard. I think he played the first 3 games of the season. I forget which way he went, but it doesn't matter. His nickname, I love it, is Pancake. It probably has something to do with eating pancakes, but it's Pancake Block is great what it is. I had a lot of left tackle experience at NC Central, and graded well as a pass blocker per PFF in his final season at Maryland. And that's the real big leagues of competition when you're in the Big Ten and trying to stop pass rushers there. So I think he's got a chance to hang around, at least be on the practice squad for this team.
Yeah, it is another local Maryland guy. Guy from, I think, how's it pronounced? Occoquan, Maryland is where he's from.
Ocracoke? Is he? I didn't see. Okay.
Yeah,
that's on the Eastern Shore. It's if we're Ocracoke. Wait a minute, Ocracoke Island. I thought was in North Carolina. Maybe I may be a different place.
So it's Accokeek is where he's from.
No, I don't know that place.
Yeah, I couldn't pronounce it, but it had an MD after it, so he's another Maryland guy. But yeah, definitely a guy like, I think none of these undrafted free agent linemen are gonna challenge any of the for a roster spot. The Ravens are really deep, especially on the interior of the offensive line. So none of these guys are posing a challenge to a guy like Salah or Voorhees, but definitely can be some intriguing practice squad options, especially a guy like Bullock, who's a local guy and had that one good year at a Power 5 for a Power 5 school after playing at NC Central. My next guy, Alabama offensive lineman Darian Dalcourt, another Maryland guy from Harvey Grace, Maryland. He's a guy. Yeah, he's a guy that played center and guard as part-time starter the past 3 years for Alabama. So he has that, that Power 5 SEC prestige. Had some experience in college. Guy who can, be cross-trained in multiple positions on the interior offensive line. He'll probably get plenty of run in the preseason and might be a decent practice squad guy.
We'll see who he is. He didn't generate much displacement on a few plays that I was able to find, but the problem is his injuries limited him to only 1,427 snaps over 5 years. So it really has not been much, but he's graded pretty well by PFF as a pass and run blocker when he's been in there. So it'd be fantastic if a guy like this could come in and play. 6'3", 310, he meets the size and shape profile. His arms are at 32 and an 8. That's short. 524 in terms of his 40. That has not been a problem for other Ravens linemen who they've made into good pullers. And that's one of the only places it really matters. But the guys who can at least get to level 2, can run the track on the pull normally. It hasn't been a problem with Bradley Bozeman, with James Hurst, with players like that in terms of getting them there. So, he's a interesting choice, and they picked a couple SEC linemen. So I'll just go to the next one next. The next SEC lineman is Darrell Simpson. Actually, no, he was actually at Oklahoma. So he was in the Big 12 before he went to Tulsa. Yeah. So 6'6", 335, 35 and 5/8 inch arms. That's very rare. Oh, yeah. And the Ravens definitely have a tendency to find guys who have good arm length at tackle. I do not know his age, but I suspect based on 6 years of college experience that he's 24 or 25. 4 years at Oklahoma with just 9 total snaps played there. So he really waited his turn there to try and find a time. His athleticism and testing is all awful. I mean, think about Orlando Brown in terms of that level of bad. I mean, every test is just, I can't believe it. When he came out and was signed to OU, he was the 11th best football player in the state of Texas. That is some major league territory again in terms of this. And he's been a fine pass blocker at Tulsa, who's used his length very well. He's played every offensive line position except for center. I don't think that versatility is really worth much. I think if he's going to make it in the NFL, he's going to have to be able to play tackle. Yeah. But yeah, he's got it. And what I did see, I watched a cut up of the Arkansas Pine Bluff game. And one thing that you'll see is on pass blocks, he does a lot of very easy 12-6 blocking. And I like to see that with guys who are his size, don't necessarily have great feet, but are able to push guys right by the packet. I mean, in his case, it's fairly effortless. At the next level, there's going to be a lot of effort involved to try and get those guys to not chop his hands away. But, a possibility again, and maybe like many other offensive tackle, he sits on the practice squad and at some point gets his chance with the Ravens.
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely a toolsy guy as far as audio measurables and stuff like that. Typical Joe D project if he can turn him into something later down the road.
So that was my guy. You're next.
Okay. Let's see. I got Morgan State safety Jordan Tolles. He's he's actual Baltimore native. He's born and raised in Baltimore. He started his career at LSU, played his freshman year there, then transferred back home. I guess maybe he was homesick or something. But he really got to start the past 2 years from Morgan State, and had 66 tackles last year, 3 TFLs, 3 interceptions, and 5 PBUs. So he has pretty decent ball skills, and I wasn't able to find much tape on him outside of some YouTube highlights, but he's a guy that might be in the mix as far as a long shot at safety depth.
Yeah, possibility. He makes it. I think he's got an uphill climb, but he does have the right size at 6'1", 216 and a 456 40. That's a nice place to start. The problem is he really has not done anything in terms of converting that on the field, even at Morgan. So 17.4% career missed tackle rate. He's got 11.2 yards per target career. And some of that is skewed by a 91-yard pass given up by LSU in his first season, but he's still 8.8 since then, which is still not good and been very consistent over that period since that one for 91 at LSU in 2020. Plays almost exclusively free safety, or did at Morgan. And I think if they can make a safety, if they can make a coverage guy out of him, he's one of the better chances to be that split field guy they need.
Yeah, those are my notes on him.
My turn next. Okay, let's talk about Chris Collier, the running back out of Lock Haven. Now, if you're wondering what Lock Haven is, and you thought it should be Lock Raven, he didn't come from Maryland that I know of anyway. But he's a transfer from Wagner to a Division III school, Lock Haven, who had won, let's see, actually D2 Football Elite 100, and he's the first team AFCA All-American. I don't know what the AFCA is, but it's Football Conference of America. Probably, I don't know what the A is for. 1,393 yards as a graduate student, 126.6 per game. And this quote I found amazing, but helped the Bald Eagles to their first 5-win season since 1982.
Oof.
Ouch. That is a long time to go without a 5-win season in 42 years. If you look at they might have had a new coach or something who's a big recruiter. I mean, this might be turned into a last chance you type situation. But from the highlight tape, what I can see is his team is just incredibly larger than their opponents, incredibly larger. And I can't really say that Collier did a lot to earn his level 2 opportunities personally. He runs through some traffic on a couple of the highlights that you can see, but a lot of it is he gets sprung into level 2, and all of a sudden the announcers call him for gone sooner than you'll ever hear it done for other running backs, because they just know he's a lot faster than everybody else at this level. He runs about a 4.51. So he went to Temple to have his pro day. So they actually played at Lock Haven. But anyway, interesting prospect.
Yeah. I mean, would definitely put up prolific numbers. Like I said, throw over 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, average almost 6 yards per carry, caught the ball a little bit, 3 touchdowns, 10.8 yards per catch. But what you don't like to see is when a guy can't crack the backfield rotation at an FCS school and then has to go down even a further level to finally get his thing. And so I'm like, okay, like if you couldn't make it at Wagner, and then you have to go down to the Division II to play against a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds, guys who probably at, because once you get down there are some high level Division IIs. Look, I went to Division II, but there are also some low level Division IIs where they're like they're D3 NAIA schools. So just the fact he had to go down that level to finally get his opportunity. When I'm like, man, there are other FCS schools that if you're really that guy, you could probably went to and still made a name for yourself instead of having to go down another level. So like I said, production is production. He put up good numbers. I'm not gonna knock the guy for that, but at the same time, like I am grading you on the curve because of the competition that you're going against. So who knows? He can show a little something in the pull what was the guy, Nate McCrary a few years back out of Saginaw Valley State. You never know what a guy can do in preseason, given some touches here and there. I think Nate McCrary's in the UFL right now. I forget what team he plays for, but I remember watching the game last week, and he was getting his first carry of the season. So
if we're watching, since you played, Division II football, so what used to be Division II anyway, I mean, it's not called that anymore, right? It's the FCS. If the JUCO level that you would see on a last chance where does that fit relative to some of the schools you're familiar with?
Oh man, I mean, depending on what state that you're in, some of those JUCOs like East Mississippi State off the last chance like those are D1 guys. Those are all like D1 talent guys.
D1 bounce backs. Yeah.
They're either D1 bounce backs or guys who didn't have the grades coming out of high school and had to go JUCO for years. So those were like D1 caliber dudes that you're going up against. And so it's just like, all right, like just because they're not all JUCOs are created equally. There are JUCOs that are filled with kids who, barely played in high school. And then there are JUCOs that are filled with 5-star athletes who just need to get their shit together a little bit.
Yeah, so Ryan Jensen and Marshall Yonda both had to go the JUCO route to get into school, get into their perspective.
Then there are those guys who just kind of fall through the cracks and they didn't get any offers coming out of high school.
Well, no, I think they're lousy students is typically the way of it. Oh. If you just don't have the grades, don't have whatever you need to go to. That's what I heard. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure about their background as high school students, but I know sometimes guys fall through the cracks, and some guys are just like gonna be meatheads in high school and don't really put the work in the classroom.
All right, your turn, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Interesting guy. I got here is Riley Sharp. So he's a guy who played from Oregon State, tight end. Although he played linebacker for his first 4 years in college, where he racked up 109 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 9 sacks. 2 forced fumbles and 5 PBUs. So he's 2-way player. I think they converted him to a tight end / H-back / fullback last year. He caught seven passes for 113 yards. And he could be the next Ben Mason, somebody who's just Patrick Ricard insurance on the practice squad for the Ravens. I don't anticipate Patrick Ricard getting a lot of playing time in the preseason and just kind of preserve him for the regular season. So he's a guy that could hang around on the practice squad as Patrick Ricard insurance.
So that's an interesting way to put it, because a lot of, the glass is half full way to say it is he's the next Patrick Ricard. And there's him and one other guy actually in this group, so we'll go to him next. But Riley Sharp, Riley Sharp, 25 years old, a really good athlete, 6'5", 237, 32 and 3/4 inch arms, and 23 bench reps, 475 40. That's a pretty damn good athlete at tight end, period. That's a guy who could, in theory, help you. What I saw on tape from him, and he's at Oregon State, so it's not like he's playing in the Power 5 still. Mm-hmm. 2 real good adjustments off target balls. You saw a high effort blocker there. I don't know what the Ravens' plan is directly for him, but I think you're probably closer to the mark to say he's Ben Mason's reset than to say he's really the next Patrick Ricard. That's that would be an overstatement of what's likely to happen. But let me talk about the Findlay guy. That's got to go to him here. Yeah, Mike Reigerman of Findlay. I think it's Reigerman. 6'3", 250, move tight end, lines up all over. The tape is only highlights out there. I couldn't find one full game.
The great Midwest Offensive Player of the Year you're talking about there.
A very high effort run blocker. And I don't know. I have no idea what level of play Findlay's at, but it's not
Division 2.
Division 2. Okay. High effort run blocker. Anyway, I thought 2 things he did well is one is maintain his feet, and it's easy to do when you're 6'3", 250, as opposed to being a more lunging athlete. He is small and slow on tape. I don't have a 40 time on him, but it ain't good. Whatever it is. And what I did notice is he does a pretty good job of adjusting to the ball on some of the highlights I saw. So I would guess the Ravens are thinking he's like a tight end / fullback guy if he works out. And again, it'd be Reigerman and the other. Help me out, Riley Sharp. Reigerman and Riley Sharp. Yeah, who will be the two who'd be competing for that, I think, one spot on the practice squad.
Yep, same here.
All right, so I just did Reigerman. It's your turn again.
Okay, where's that guy? Okay, Kentucky wide receiver Tavion Robinson. He's a guy prototypical slot at the NFL level. He never put up prolific numbers in college, but they were always solid number 2, number 3, receiver numbers. I think the most he ever put up in a season between his time at VTech and Kentucky was in 2021 when he put up 44 catches for 59 yards, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, he's a guy that said it's just working out of the slot. I think he's under 6 foot, and then he can also be a guy that can be used on jet sweeps and stuff like that too. So I think he averaged 13.4 yards per catch in college. Peaked in 2020 with 15.6, but he's another slot receiver option.
Okay. Robinson had the good fortune of playing with Leary as a senior. So the Ravens 6th round draft pick quarterback probably, I think, could have had a better year. But he was at 8.3 yards per target and 5.6 yak per reception. Only had 4 missed tackles forced on 41 receptions this last year. 88.7 passer rating when targeted. That's right around where Leary's overall passer rating was. So he wasn't better than the average receiver there at Kentucky. A little bit of a slippery route runner. Definitely does not have that elite suddenness that you associate with some slot receivers. So that's a positive. I don't think he's going to give you a lot as a run blocker, but we'll see. Maybe with the Ravens, everybody needs to learn how to run block, I should say. So that should be good. I think he plays a little bit bigger than he is. And my initial guess from seeing him is very, very cut athlete from top to bottom, very, very tall, thin, receivery looking athlete. I think he plays bigger than he probably is at 5'10 and a half. Did have some focus drops that were on tape. It's interesting because the tape I watched really had a lot of his drops on it, which was nice to see. Also had a lot of overthrows from Leary where he was wide open. Okay, getting some feedback from you now. All right. Anyway, 1-year trial for him. Somehow, I don't think this is the kind of player who stays around on your practice squad for 2 years, as some of the others have. But I guess we'll see how that works out. And Tavian Robinson, anyway, from wide receiver from Kentucky. I'll go ahead and move on and talk about my next guy then, and that's going to be, how about Tramel Walther, the DTD end from Georgia. Big body, 6'3", 270, 5'14", 40, 31 3/8. I don't have an age on him, but he played an extra year at college. Played in every game for Georgia, but only 270 rotational snaps on defense this last season. I wouldn't look down on that. I mean, Georgia plays rotationally as much as about any college program, and they kept some very good athletes off the field and from away from being overused very effectively doing that, including the Jordan Davis, the guy who went to the Eagles. Jordan Davis, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And Jalen Carter, both of them.
Jalen Carter too. Yeah, he didn't play a ton of snaps. 9 of his 12 tackles were defensive wins. He did not miss a tackle in 2023, which is nice. 41 career games at Georgia. I think he'd be a 5-tech for the Ravens, maybe a backup if Urban misses time at some point. Didn't have a cut up of him in particular. All the Tramel Walther videos are of him talking about returning to Georgia or him being mic'd up for a game when he's on the sideline, that sort of thing. But it's really not a lot of his actual play.
Yeah, that was that. Well, you covered most of my notes on him. It was like 5-tech, Brent Urban backup or preseason sub. You know, I don't know how much they're gonna want to play a guy like Brent Urban in the preseason just because they already know what they have in a guy like that. So a guy like Wolfer would definitely get a lot of run come August, but I don't know if he'd be in much consideration as far as when it comes to final cut down.
All right, you're up.
Okay, next, another defensive lineman from Duke, Jamin Franklin. So he's a guy, another Maryland guy from Wrigley, Maryland. He's a guy that more in the 3-tech build. He was teammates with Kyle Hamilton for 2 years in Notre Dame from 2019, 2020. Didn't really start producing to his final 2 years at Duke, where he had 4 sacks and 8.5 tackles for loss and batted down 6 passes and had a fumble recovery. But yeah, he's a guy that another solid camp body defensive line rotation, and a lot of times he's the kind of guy that the Ravens will give a lot of burn come in the preseason, like especially in those third and fourth quarters. Might even check in a little earlier than that. Who knows with the rotation this, because they have guys like Michael Pierce and I don't think you're going to want to pay Matabike at all, given all the money.
I mean, I'd say any of the guys who are the big five. I'd almost want to play none of them. I mean, but you could play Urban for some of the first half, but Broderick Washington, do you want to see him maybe get his game together since things didn't work out all that well last year? But I definitely would not want to see Pierce, Matabike, or even Travis Jones on the field for any risk. Not
at all. So, yeah, he's a guy that you'll definitely get plenty of run in the preseason and could earn him a preseason spot.
Franklin has an interesting number here. He went at his pro day. He benched 36 times. Okay, that would have led all defensive linemen this year. But, and here's the big but, he's got 29-inch arms, which are the shortest I've ever heard of.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go again. But even there's the guy Gaines, Kelly Gregg, some other guys have been like 31 inches and a little less than that. I've never heard of a defensive lineman with 29-inch arms. I have never heard of that. Occasionally a slot receiver, occasionally a corner will be a particular slot corner might have arms that length, but never a defensive lineman. So it's a really outrageous thing. It's a great bench rep number, and I don't want to put it down in any way, but it's not quite as great as if he had 31 and a half or 32-inch arms. So it would be better for playing on the defensive line. Very sparse playing time at Notre Dame, 3 years where he played much more at Duke. He's got some very impressive high school highlights from his play in Maryland. So I thought that was kind of cool, but there's only about 4 plays in there. And I could not find a cut up that, had him highlighted or carroted or circled on a play-by-play, but interesting player. All right, my turn again, isn't it? Let's talk about Vandy Rigby, the inside linebacker out of Temple. Now here's a pretty good athlete here: 6'1", 239, 32 and 3/8, and 462 on the 40 with 23 bench reps. That's a pretty decent all-around athlete. It's really good size for an inside linebacker, by the way, to be able to hold 239 and still run 462. That's pretty damn good. Decent job in terms of coverage with 6.9 yards per target allowed, 14.9% missed tackle rate. Is a little high, but he had his tackling and coverage improve each year. I believe he's from Nigeria originally. I might be wrong about his point of origin, but he's relatively new to the game, and a guy who very well could be competing for say a fifth inside linebacker spot on a 4 inside linebacker group, which means he'd be the top guy on the practice squad. So I don't think he'll make the team, but I guess you never actually know how injuries might play out.
Yeah, no, it'd definitely be some difficult competition for a guy like a Josh Ross who's trying to make the team as that special teams only kind of guy starting off. But yeah, he's a guy that said he's played really consistently at Temple, had pretty decent production there. That 68 total tackles last year, 82 the year before. Makes nice plays in the backfield, can make some plays on the quarterback with four career sacks. So he's a guy that definitely could flash in the preseason and definitely hang around in the practice squad. And with that, I guess we go to my next guy, the other linebacker out of Rutgers, Deion Jennings. So he's a guy that was also pretty decent in college. I think he played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So his 5th year senior. All of his playing time came at Rutgers. Almost recorded over 100 tackles in back-to-back seasons to close out his career there. So he's a guy that tackle machine, a lot of Big Ten production. So I'm not sure, I don't have any of his advanced metrics in front of me, but he's another solid inside linebacker, competing with the Ross kind of guy.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Am I breaking up at all?
No, you're good.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, Jennings at 6'0", 230, 471. Another pretty good build for an inside linebacker. I think he was a fine 2-down inside linebacker at Rutgers, 32 defensive stops and 8 missed tackles. That's a really good 4.0 to 1 ratio. As I said, there weren't many guys over that in college football this last year among the draftable linebackers, but the big one was Peyton Wilson, who was at over 11 to 1. But anyway, that's a 4 to 1 is actually a pretty darn good ratio. I think one of the Ravens' potential needs is as a 2-down inside linebacker. If anything were to happen to Roquan, they don't really have that guy on the roster currently. I do think you can find him, but I don't think that they have him right now. I don't know exactly what they would do. They might move Ross there. I think the ideal guy would be more of a thumper. Jennings might fit the bill for that. Coverage is adequate, 6.9 yards per target, 95.0 opposition passer rating. Watch the cut up from Michigan. Mixed bag. I think you find it. Obviously it's a quality opponent that he's going against, but he had a really nice, good block shed to start out, and then he undercut an out route, and I'm like, wow, okay, this guy's pretty good. And then nice quick coverage on a flat route, and then I see him get blocked by the tight end and pretty much taken out of the play pretty easily. And so failed to contain Corum when he really had his side of the field was open. He just needed to contain it, close it down a little better on the left side. And then he lost contain of the quarterback on an option read, which is unfortunate. It happens, obviously, but he was immediately making a tackle on the running back who was in the mesh. It was a matter of he was late and misread it. So that's kind of the bad combination of those. But honestly, if you're looking at the linebackers that are in camp, I think Jennings is a real possibility to make the practice squad, probably even an outside chance to make the team.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, it's my turn because you said Jennings first, right? So how about we go on to Ryan Cooper, the cornerback from Oregon State, 6'0", 187, real small frame, and somewhat small frame, I should say. Nice. We've seen smaller frames in corners. But I'm thinking of him more as a safety, thinking, could this guy be the split field guy? Because I think that's a possibility. They're looking at some of these corners in that way. Did have some big problems as a missed tackler, 22.6% missed tackle rating 2 years at Oregon, with fewer stops than missed tackles. Right there, that tells you probably no on the whole safety thing. And then still, he's had passer ratings in the 70s the last 2 seasons. If you look at his interceptions in particular, the common thread is that he's a good read the quarterback guy who usually likes to play behind the receiver. So he's more of a cover 3 guy who likes to break on the ball, or even a guy who likes to break down on a comeback route really quickly. Had some beautiful interceptions that way. Experienced both at slot and on the outside. Maybe he's cornerback depth, and that would be probably the place I was kind of hoping that maybe he could be a split field guy too. But after looking at the tackle rate and whatnot, I just don't think that's in the cards. So, again, probably a practice squad guy. Maybe at some point he's on the roster this season at corner.
Yeah. You hit a lot of the same points I have on him. They said he's a nice athletic corner, not the ideal frame, but like plenty of ball production, 18 pass breakups and the 4 interceptions, like you alluded to. So I've had a long shot to make the roster with the additions of both Wiggins and TJ Tampa, and even some of the holdovers that they had from last year. But you never know. So training camp injuries could pile up like it did last year, and you have a guy like that fighting for a roster spot. Oh, okay. So it's my turn. So next guy I got here is Florida quarterback Emory Jones. So he's a dual threat guy. Like with the selection of Devin Leary kind of confused me a little bit, just because like I was like, okay, well he's not really in the Lamar Jackson mold. Like it's clearly an indictment on what they feel as far as Malik Cunningham's prospects. But as far as usually teams draft, if they want to take a dart throw on a guy, it's usually guys kind of in a similar mold to your starting quarterback. But you're starting to see a little bit more and more the teams with athletic quarterbacks are starting to get more stationary pocket passers as their backup quarterbacks because they kind of want to simplify the playbook. Like you'll see a guy like Joe Flacco go to back up a guy like Anthony Richardson. Like you couldn't have two more polar opposite, as far as playing styles. But like you have our super freak athlete of a quarterback is down. Okay, let's dumb this thing down, strip it down to the studs, and we're gonna kind of play a more basic kind of game. So like in a sense, I get it. In another sense, I kind of don't get it. But then you got a guy like Emory Jones, who's more in the Lamar Jackson mode as far as being more of a dual threat guy. That he didn't put up crazy production in college. I think his best year came in 2021. Then his final year at Florida when he threw for 2,700 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions, and also ran for 758 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he's a dual threat guy. Spent a year at Arizona State, didn't do anything there. Then went to Cincinnati this past season, had 18 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Then ran for another 560 and 4 touchdowns. So he's more in the Lamar Jackson mold, but I think because of Devin Leary's connection that he has with T. Martin, he'd be hard pressed to beat this guy out. So just be another interesting training camp guy. Because they seem like that. John Harbaugh even said it himself. Their team deadlocked on Josh Johnson being the backup. So I don't know how much he's going to play in the preseason. And Lamar's definitely not going to play. So you're going to need a 4th quarterback.
I mean, Josh Johnson is a placeholder in terms of his spot with the Ravens. And I think the Ravens will have failed in their mission, and they definitely will have wasted a 6th-round draft pick if Leary or somebody else does not take the role immediately. I don't have any problem if it's not Leary. If somebody else outplays Leary, like Emory Jones, like somebody else they pick up during the camp process, no problem. No problem wasting the 6th-round pick and going with somebody else. But I really don't want to see them going a whole nother year with Josh Johnson as the backup quarterback and having him be the number 2 on game day, and then have him actually start a game where Lamar misses because he's sick or because he hurt or whatever it might be. That's a really bad position to be in. Josh Johnson, his total NFL record is quite bad in terms of games won and lost when he started, but he's also been around forever, and obviously the Ravens trust him. One thing I did notice about Emory Jones is that he really holds the ball a long time. And that's often something that's a criticism of Jackson. Well, Jackson has elite playmaking ability after the fact. I mean, he gets sacked a lot very late. The cut up from LSU in 2021, he's just sitting in the pocket making sandwiches, waiting for somebody to come open, and it ain't happening. At some point, he's got to get rid of that football, and I think that was a interesting game to watch. Now it's a 2-year-old piece of tape. Maybe some of those habits have gone away in his times at either Arizona State or Cincinnati, but kind of a mediocre passer, 87.5 rating, 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. You're doing that at the college level. It doesn't really project all that well like the pro level. Was a good scrambler, 7.0 yards per carry on scrambles. So maybe I'm hopeful. And to your original point, which I think is really interesting, about do you want a stylistic fit exactly, or do you want a guy who's different? I like the other reason I like the different guy is something Jordan Coe brought up. So I'm not going to take credit for his thought, but is that it doesn't allow the other team, at least the first time you play this guy, to have a lot of advanced scouting that's meaningful. Now you may not need to, but you may be able to simplify things down against a pocket passer. But whenever Leary has to first take the field for the Baltimore Ravens, if ever, I think this is like Marge Simpson saying, "Let us never speak of him again." It's the easiest way we can hopefully not hear his name very often. But if he does ever take the field, it's going to be a different look for that opponent.
Yeah, and there's definitely value in that, just because like when the Marlins were down previously, you kind of like when Tyler Huntley comes in, you kind of run the same defense perspective. You kind of run the same game plan, just a little bit more simplified, because this guy hasn't seen everything, hasn't done everything, so we can probably bait him into some bad throws and do all this. When you're going to get some more prototypical pocket passer, and a guy who's used to working more from the pocket, more so than relying on his legs, then you can kind of fall into that trap of, okay, well, what do we do now? We haven't had a chance to see this guy, and then that guy could just sit back and read the defense more so than a guy who's kind of more reliant on his mobility, like a Lamar or Tyler Huntley.
All right, I guess it's my turn for the next guy. We'll go with Isaiah Washington, the wide receiver out of Rutgers. Built like a wide receiver the Ravens really like to draft. I looked at one camp roster, and everybody on the entire team, I think except for Steve Smith that year, was over 6 feet tall. Isaiah Washington, 6'2", 206, 33-inch arms, 461, 40. That's not that great. A 698 3-cone is really unusual for a man his size, by the way. 5 years at Rutgers, a lot of Rutgers guys this year. 6.5 yards per target, both in 2023 and in his career. That is terrible.
Yeah,
that's just awful. He's only had 2 career drops, which is nice, but he's been poor uncontested catches, 15 out of 42. Career rating throwing to him was 71.0. So that isn't what you want out of your quarterback or out of your receiver. And he's also got several fumbles at Rutgers. So that's the kind of thing. His Ravens experience could be over very quickly if he starts fumbling even in the preseason. So hopefully he's learned to hold on to the football. And I wonder what it is they like about him, other than the obvious thing, which is the size, that they think they can make him into a receiver.
Yeah, but I was like, when I was watching him, I was like, he's a big guy that doesn't play big. I'd much rather give a guy like Sean Ryan, his former teammate, more run than I would this guy, especially in the preseason. Give me more of Sean Ryan, and I don't even know if this guy makes it to training camp. So, like I said, he was the guy. His most productive season was last year, and he only put up like 321 receiving yards and not even 30 catches, and he's never caught more than one touchdown in a single season. So you kind of hate to see. I thought he was when I was younger. I used to always tell people who were taller, I'm like, man, your height is just wasted on you. You're not even doing anything. You're not even doing anything with it. I was like, I used to tell people all the time, you know what I would do with this build with that height? Like it frustrates me when people with all the physical tools don't utilize them. So when you see a guy who is big but doesn't play big, it's really disappointing.
I've heard that too as a consistent non-athlete. I've heard that a lot too from other people I play baseball with or whatever. Is like your height is wasted. So, anyway, I understand. And I'm talking to the linebacker. So who would you like to talk about next?
Next guy. Who do we have? Shoot, who do we have? Oh, the D3 guy, the other receiver. Where am
Angelo Hardy?
Yeah, D'Angelo Hardy. He's a guy that put up prolific numbers in college at North Central College. But we're talking about Division III now. Anyways, three back-to-back seasons of over 1,000 yards, 2 back-to-back seasons of over 1,100 yards and 20 touchdowns. So he's a guy that's definitely gonna, definitely a dart throw and stabbing a dart. There's only so much you can glean from D3 tape. So he's a guy that you're gonna want to bring in. Like, okay, can you do a modicum of that at this level. So I don't mind taking a UDFA flyer on a guy like that with that kind of production, and he's decent size too. So I'd be a little I'm looking forward to seeing him in the preseason, see if he can go from D3 to the big leagues.
You hit on a lot of this here. 6'1", 208 and 461. Really unimpressive jumps, though. He's kind of a middling athlete for a wide receiver in the league, despite outstanding stats. Here's what I want to know. Is the area scout who was responsible for NC Central? Okay, first of all, they probably had some time seeing the linemen there and also seeing Hardy. But my question is, how many times did he see him play, do you think, in the season? Do you think he saw him play like 6 or 7 times, or do you think no, he's really got more teams he's following around there? It's really like 4 games, and they really are looking at his build and selecting him more based on that.
I think he had a lot of tape sent to him more so than actually going to see this guy play.
Probably true. Okay, well, good pick there. I'll move on to John McCartan, the outside linebacker from Oregon State. Kind of an interesting guy in one particular way. 6'6", 253. So that's a little bit Ted Hendricks size like. Ted Hendricks once, when he came into the league, listed at 6'7", 212, which, by the way, is just it's hard to imagine that much weight stretched on a frame like that in terms of how gaunt it was. But then later on in his career, he got up to about 245 or something, where I think is where he played for his Hall of Fame days with the Raiders. When he came up with the Colts, he was a much taller, thinner guy. And the real question was he giving up the strength to do it? Well, McCartan, very unusually slim build for an outside linebacker there, 32 and 7/8-inch arms, 520 in the 40 is not what you want at outside linebacker. And yet he's got a 35% coverage rate on pass plays. So they obviously trust this guy, at least in zone coverage. He allowed 7.7 yards per target. That's not good. But he also had 4 interceptions and a 75 opposition passer rate. So that is good. He's done some positive things. He also does seem to have a missed tackle problem with 20.3% in his career. But he also has 9.5 sacks and 20 tackles for loss. So he's not without productive plays. Really interesting barbell player in terms of his athletic profile, his barbells. His production is barbells, and his some of his problems are real barbells. I can't really say the guy seems like a Sam outside linebacker to me. I think he probably would have a lot of trouble staying with just about anybody at 520. But we'll see. Maybe he uses his size really well as a large player underneath who obstructs passing lanes and makes quarterbacks nervous. Maybe that's really what his success is about. But anyway, interesting player.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely has longer odds than a guy like a Joe Evans, who I feel like would definitely have a better shot of challenging a guy like Malik Ham for that sixth spot. But like a guy kind of reminds me a little bit of Vince Beagle a little bit. Just like less athletic as far as a guy who I would say a wannabe Sam, but somebody who was they tried him out to utilize him in a similar role, and it's fine at the college level. But when you're bumping up to the next level, a guy who was a kind of sort of wannabe Sam, could be a liability at the next level. So I mean, we'll see. Definitely be a guy get some run come August.
All right, I think there's only one other guy on the list, and that's a long snapper. I don't really have anything to say about him personally, other than Nick Moore is returning to be the long snapper, and Ott left in free agency. Tyler Ott did. So the thing about Nick Moore is he'll be 32 in December. Hasn't been around for anywhere near as long as previous long snappers have been with the Ravens. But still 32 in December. You got to think about, is this time to reset? And Brandon Plattner of Kansas State played 5 years there, but he probably isn't over 24 years old right now. That's it. I don't have a birth date on him.
No. My only note was, Nick Moore insurance, because Nick Moore tore his Achilles in July of last year, so he's still less than a year removed from it. And I'm pretty sure, especially as a long snapper, there's not a whole lot that you need as far as rehab from that. I'm pretty sure he was long snapping a few months post-op, so I don't know what more this is, much more than a camp body, but like I said, Nick Moore insurance. Somebody's the only note I had on him.
All right. How about give me one player that you think is the most likely out of this group to make the Ravens in 2024? It's got to be on the starting 53.
To me, it's a tie between Joe Evans and Bo from Maryland. Just those two guys. A lot of the other guys, like the offensive tackle guys, are more projects and screen practice squad to me. Like I said, linebackers maybe one of those two linebackers, but to me that it's 1A is Bo and 1B would be Joe Evans.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go off the reservation here and say it's Tramel Walter is the guy that I would project to do it. And obviously that's really going outside the comfort zone because Bo Braid has a good chance to do it just because the Ravens are so short on safeties. There's a lot of ways that he could potentially fit in. And also the seventh round safety Kane. I don't even see him as anything more than a dime possibility and a special teams player. And he could make the team, I guess, just based on that. But he doesn't really fit a need in some way that's really critical. He's not. I mean, the Ravens they need back end snaps. They need guys they can trust in cover two to basically do the same thing they did defensively last year. And there aren't a lot of them, but they probably end up going to the street and getting a veteran guy to do it. Would be my guess. I really thought they had the guy in Jeremy Lucien. I thought he was going to give them some of that. I don't know, what went wrong there, but he's not signed right now. And if he was going to be, I would imagine it would happen very, very shortly.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned about them potentially bringing in a guy. I'm actually about to write something soon about that, about the best available free agent safeties. It's because I feel like that's something, as much as I like a guy like Bo Braid, it's just you want somebody, like I said, you want somebody you can trust back there. That's not just quality depth, but also somebody who can free Kyle Hamilton to be that hybrid slot defender that made him the first team All-Pro last year.
Josh, always a pleasure to do this with you. I'll look for you next year to do this exact same thing, and hopefully we'll have you on a couple more times this offseason to talk about either two players or other memories kind of shows. But tell folks where they can find your work online.
Yeah, you can find all my Ravens content at BaltimoreBeatdown.com, and I also work full time for Anchorage Daily News up here in Anchorage, Alaska. We just recently had a Alaskan drafted into the NFL, Adefon Ulofoshio from Washington. He got drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the fifth round, number 160 overall. So I'll be talking to him pretty soon. And that's where you can find all my stuff.
I really liked Ulofoshio. He was number 9 on my list, and I talked to you ahead of time to make sure I got his name pronunciation correct. But he was a guy I would have been real excited. I was sad when he went off the board because I thought he hit the Ravens.
Yeah, me too.
Ways. All right, my friend. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a film study short, hit me up. I'll be starting up in earnest in June on those, particularly some of the recollection series and also the 2 players series, which takes us all the way right up to training camp. You don't remember from last year, it's 1 offensive player, 1 defensive player. I create the pairings. You choose one you want to talk about, and we'll discuss those players and what their role is in the Baltimore Ravens in 2024. Josh, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Ken, like always.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.